Did you know that Seinfeld was almost canceled after its very first test episode because a group of network executives found it too New York and not relatable enough? They didn't believe a show about the everyday minutiae of life could ever draw a broad audience. But Jerry Seinfeld and co-creator Larry David stuck to their guns, determined to prove that a show about nothing might be exactly what viewers needed. They certainly got the last laugh. Seinfeld went on to become one of the most influential sitcoms in television history. Let's explore how this little project from two comedians changed the face of comedy, shaped popular culture, and left us with an endless supply of quotable lines and memorable moments. 1. Originally called The Seinfeld Chronicles. Seinfeld wasn't always called Seinfeld. When Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David first pitched their show to NBC, they presented it under the working title The Seinfeld Chronicles. The network only ordered 4 episodes, practically unheard of at the time, since most new sitcoms received 13. The executives were uncertain if a show about nothing would land with mainstream viewers. Yet, by some stroke of good fortune, those 4 episodes aired in summer, tested well enough, and NBC gave them another chance. Little did anyone guess this low-key test run would spawn a comedy that reshaped the entire sitcom landscape. 2. Larry David banned moral lessons. Larry David initially doubted that mainstream audiences would get his humor. He didn't want to do conventional storylines like The Family Learns a Moral Lesson or The Buddy Gets a Puppy. Instead, David insisted on writing scripts about everyday gripes like miscommunications, waiting in lines, or dealing with annoying neighbors. Jerry Seinfeld agreed. They vowed to avoid any sentimental wrap-ups. No hugging, no learning. Policy became the show's signature, distancing it from all other sitcoms that ended episodes with a heartfelt moment. They wanted a comedic universe where people stayed petty, self-absorbed, and oddly relatable. 3. Elaine wasn't in the pilot. Julia Louis-Dreyfus wasn't in the pilot. Back then, the executives demanded a female lead, feeling the pilot was too male-oriented and lacked diversity. The original concept involved a waitress at the local diner, but the idea fizzled out. Instead, they created Elaine Beans, giving her a sharper personality than a mere service worker cameo. Once Julia Louis-Dreyfus joined, the chemistry soared. Her sharp wit meshed with Jerry's observational humor, and her ex-girlfriend vibe with him added playful tension. Fans quickly came to see Elaine as the group's secret weapon, rational, yet often as self-centered as the rest. 4. George became Larry David. Jason Alexander, George Costanza, once said he originally modeled George after Woody Allen. Intellectual, anxious, always overthinking. Over time, however, George morphed into the living embodiment of Larry David's personality. Larry funneled his own odd habits and frustrations, like refusing to tip the housekeeper or concocting elaborate excuses to avoid social obligations, into George's storylines. Eventually, viewers realized George wasn't just a comedic friend. He was the show's manifestation of raw neurosis, clashing with Jerry's casual style. The combination made for countless episodes of comedic chaos. 5th Kramer's entrances were rehearsed. Michael Richards became famous for Kramer's wild door entries. He'd fling himself through Jerry's apartment door with so much force that crew members sometimes feared for his safety. Richards repeatedly practiced physical comedy, perfecting the perfect slide in or spin around. That unhinged energy was balanced by Larry David's insistence that Kramer never do anything truly malicious. Yes, he was chaotic, but also childlike in curiosity, making him weirdly lovable no matter how many bizarre schemes he cooked up. 6. Monk's Café was based on Tom's. The show's setting, Monk's Café, was inspired by a real restaurant called Tom's Restaurant near Columbia University in Manhattan. Tourists still swing by to snap photos of the iconic neon sign glimpsed in establishing shots. The interior, of course, was a set on a studio lot, but those who visit Tom's can't help but imagine Jerry and George arguing over a plate of fries, or Elaine lamenting her love life in the booth by the window. 7 stand-up bits added Jerry's voice. Between comedic bits in each episode, Jerry Seinfeld would perform short stand-up segments, usually filmed separately from the main storyline. The writers often brainstormed everyday aggravations for Jerry's jokes, like the woes of laundry day or why people never close cereal boxes properly. This element gave Seinfeld a distinctive flavor, merging real stand-up with fictional comedic scenarios. It also highlighted Jerry's observational humor, rooting the show in his comedic sensibility. 8. George mirrored Larry's real life. George's never-ending cycle of failed or odd jobs mirrored Larry David's own eclectic resume. Larry famously quit Saturday Night Live mid-season out of frustration, then returned on Monday, pretending it never happened, an event that George basically recreated in an episode. That sense of comedic rebellion and disregard for social norms became central to George's character, fueling plot lines about him scheming or lying his way out of daily responsibilities. 9. No hugging, no learning. Rule. The network initially pleaded for more heart, wanting each episode to end with a tidy moral or apology between friends. Jerry and Larry dug in their heels, refusing to let their characters become sentimental. No hugging, no learning was their motto, and ironically, by avoiding typical sitcom sweetness, Seinfeld felt fresher. Audiences found these everyday anti-heroes oddly refreshing, unafraid to be self-centered or petty. Where other sitcoms taught lessons, Seinfeld taught us that sometimes people simply remain the same. 10. Elaine's dance was all Julia. Elaine's legendary dance scene, where she flails her arms and legs in a spectacle so cringy it's mesmerizing, was Julia Louis-Dreyfus's brainchild. She wanted to show Elaine's utter lack of rhythm in comedic extremes. The result is one of the show's most replayed clips, a comedic cautionary tale about busting out little kicks at office parties. People still mention that scene whenever talk of dreadful dancing arises. 11. Wayne Knight made Newman iconic. Newman wasn't originally Wayne Knight's role. Early scripts had a different actor in mind, but once Knight auditioned, the writers adored his combination of faux sophistication and petty malevolence. They reworked Newman from an off-screen voice into Jerry's arch-nemesis, fully fleshing out the dynamic of "Hello, Jerry" and "Hello, Newman." Knight's comedic flair turned Newman into the perfect comedic foil. 12. Cheers, timeslot boosted ratings. Seinfeld didn't top the weekly ratings until NBC paired it with Cheers. On Thursday nights, after Cheers, bowed out, Seinfeld inherited that prime slot, catapulting it to the #1 spot. This synergy between established hits and emerging shows was common in network strategy, but rarely had it fueled such explosive success. Suddenly, the cast found themselves recognized everywhere, from supermarkets to airports. 13. Soup Nazi was based on reality. The Soup Nazi episode, featuring the strict soup vendor with a no-nonsense policy, was based on a real soup shop in New York. After the episode aired, the real-life shop saw lines wrap around the block, with fans chanting lines from the show, sometimes annoying the owner. The crew had been half worried about possible defamation complaints, but it ended up giving him free publicity. Soup lines soared, though some customers got the same no-soup punishments if they messed up their order. 14. Larry David rewrote endings fast. Larry David could be quite hands-on. If an episode's final punchline didn't get the laughs he wanted at a test screening, he'd rewrite the entire ending. Jason Alexander recalled times where David rushed onto the set just before filming, script pages flapping, announcing a new twist for George's meltdown. That unpredictability made the show's comedic voice sharper, but it also gave the cast little time to rehearse. They had to trust David's comedic instincts were on point. 15, The Contest, pushed TV limits. Certain episodes delved into taboo topics. The Contest, about masturbation or smelly car, about lingering body odor. Some NBC executives squirmed, predicting backlash. But each time the show flirted with scandal, ratings soared, proving that viewers loved comedic honesty about everyday embarrassments. Seinfeld fans even started adopting the euphemisms like master of my domain, turning them into cultural catchphrases. 16. Richards improvised physical stunts. Michael Richards improvised many of Kramer's physical stunts. In rehearsal, he'd test out wild slides or leaps. If it caused the staff to laugh, it stayed. If it flopped, Richards quietly ditched it. This fearless approach produced iconic moments, like Kramer's frantic coffee table book presentations or those flying entrances that left the audience breathless. His comedic commitment often overshadowed everything else in the scene, but the cast accepted it as part of the show's comedic ecosystem. 17. Guest stars became household names. Jerry's love interests became a who's who of up-and-coming actresses. Terry Hatcher famously showed up as Sidra, leading to the memorable line, "They're real and they're spectacular." Jane Leaves, later famous for Frasier, appeared as a virgin. Deborah Messing, before Will and Grace, had a short arc as Beth. Many of these guest stars arrived from day to day, quickly memorized lines, and were filming comedic exchanges by afternoon. 18. Writers became future showrunners. The show's writing room featured future comedy giants like Alec Berg and Jeff Schaffer. They honed their ability to craft comedic tension from mundane topics, double-dipping a chip, regifting an unwanted present, or picking the wrong bagel flavor. After Seinfeld, they carried that comedic knowledge into projects like Curb Your Enthusiasm and Silicon Valley. This cross-pollination of comedic minds solidified Seinfeld's reputation as a comedic boot camp for future TV hits. 19. Network feared cast was unlikable. NBC worried the characters were unlikable. With storylines about George faking an injury, Elaine snubbing friends, Kramer scamming ways to get free stuff, and Jerry analyzing everyone's quirks, these folks looked downright selfish. Jerry Seinfeld defended them, saying they were just honest about their pettiness, no phony politeness. Audiences eventually adored them, celebrating the show's moral neutrality. Critics called it a comedic experiment in everyday jerkiness. 20. Chinese Restaurant changed sitcoms. One famous minimalistic episode is The Chinese Restaurant, where Jerry, George, and Elaine spend the entire time waiting for a table. No major set changes, no B-plot, just 20-odd minutes of waiting. NBC hated it at first, claiming nothing happened. Larry David fought to keep it, believing the petty frustration of waiting for Chinese food resonated with everyone. He was right. The fan reaction soared, and The Chinese Restaurant became a template for how Seinfeld could transform small annoyances into comedic gold. 21. Larry left, but returned for finale. Larry David left the show after season 7, feeling he'd given all he had. The network tried coaxing him to stay, but David insisted on stepping away. Yet he returned to write the finale, where the 4 main characters find themselves on trial for their many sins. Some fans found that finale ironically fitting. The group's own misdeeds come back to haunt them. Others deemed it too mean-spirited. Regardless, the finale drew massive viewership and remains one of the most talked-about series endings ever. 22nd finale drew 76 million viewers. That finale still sparks debate. People ask, Was it clever justice or a cynical note to end on? The show had always thrived on cynicism, so some applaud the trial as a comedic highlight. Others yearned for a gentler farewell. But no matter the stance, the finale drew over 76 million viewers, many hosting watch parties that turned into cultural events. That enormous audience figure showcased Seinfeld's popularity, even if they parted with a curveball ending. 23. Elaine taught Julia full comedy. Julia Louis-Dreyfus credits Elaine with teaching her how to commit fully to comedic roles. By leaning into Elaine's neurotic side, she discovered the power of comedic confidence. Later, she parlayed that skill into multiple Emmy wins for The New Adventures of Old Christine and Veep. She's often remarked that Seinfeld gave her the comedic foundation she'd rely on her entire career. 24, Slang-like, yada yada, lives on. The show minted slang that seeped into everyday speech, like close talker, double dip, shrinkage, and regifting. People still use these terms, sometimes not even remembering their Seinfeld origins. That infiltration of language signals how deeply the show influenced pop culture. Even yada yada yada. An old phrase gained renewed life as a comedic shorthand for breezing over boring details. 25. Soup Nazi got Emmy nod. Larry Thomas's portrayal of the Soup Nazi was so iconic that he earned an Emmy nomination. That's remarkable for a one-episode character. Thomas's stern glare and rapid-fire insults, "No soup for you," delighted fans who found the bizarre meanness hilarious. In real life, the show caused lines at a real soup vendor's shop to triple, though the vendor, like the Soup Nazi, wasn't too amused by all the "no soup for you" echoes from his newfound customers. 26 cast earned record salaries. Seinfeld turned Jerry Seinfeld and the co-stars into some of TV's highest-paid actors. By the final seasons, Jerry himself was reportedly making around $1 million per episode, unheard of at that time for a sitcom star. This massive paycheck spoke to the show's rating dominance and the unique comedic brand that advertisers coveted. Meanwhile, the others, Jason Alexander, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and Michael Richards, also negotiated big raises, securing them financial comfort well after the series wrapped. 27. Syndication made it immortal. Syndication was where Seinfeld truly became unstoppable. The show's reruns aired daily across multiple networks, ensuring that any time you turned on TV, you might stumble upon Jerry and George discussing The Marine Biologist, or Elaine dealing with The Sponge. Younger audiences discovered the show this way, turning Seinfeld into a multi-generational phenomenon. The comedic writing, free of heavy pop culture references, aged surprisingly well. 28. Inspired modern nothing. Comedies. Over the years, Seinfeld paved the way for more about nothing. Comedies like Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is basically Larry David unfiltered, and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which jacked up the selfishness to new levels. Even Friends, borrowed from Seinfeld's, approach to New York-based buddy humor, though it added more sentiment. Seinfeld had proven that comedic success could come from focusing on tiny, everyday grievances rather than grand romantic arcs or tearful conclusions. 29 lines became cultural shorthand. People still quote lines like, "No soup for you," or, "Not that there's anything wrong with that," or use references like shrinkage to describe awkward beach moments. In many ways, the show's comedic lexicon outlived the series itself. Nicknames for episodes, like the Bubble Boy, the Puffy Shirt, or the Yada Yada, became shorthand in casual conversation. Decades after the show concluded, that kind of cultural imprint remains rare among sitcoms, a testament to Seinfeld's broad appeal. 30. Seinfeld's humor still feels timeless. Even now, Seinfeld stands as a comedic time capsule of 1990s urban life, landlines, answering machines, pre-internet social dilemmas. Yet its core comedic approach, observing the silliness of human behavior, feels timeless. Jerry Seinfeld, reflecting on the show's success, once credited the cast's remarkable chemistry and Larry David's unstoppable comedic engine. The world might change, but petty annoyances like waiting for a table at a Chinese restaurant, wearing the wrong shirt, or dealing with a jerk who won't share bread will always amuse us. That's what keeps Seinfeld so fresh after all these years. Looking back, it's incredible how a pilot with a meager 4-episode order blossomed into a sitcom that redefined comedic norms. The show's no hugging, no learning ethos defied the sentimental arcs that ruled 1980s television. Characters rarely grew or apologized, yet we still rooted for them because they were us, flawed, impatient, living in an absurdly amplified version of reality. And yes, it was a show about nothing, but that nothingness ended up saying everything about the quirks of everyday life. Today, younger fans discovering it on streaming realize these jokes about cereal, parking spaces, or dinner reservations remain oddly relevant